Where's the mic?
I'll repeat myself. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Subcommittee 3 Highway Safety and Policy Committee. And if the clerk would take attendance, please.
Delegate Watts?
Thank you.
Excuse me, I was muted. Aye. Present.
Thank you. Clerk will close the roll.
Tim is here.
And we have one more delegate. Delegate Anderson is here. A little housekeeping first. Delegate Lopez, I think, left, but the request of Delegate Lopez, we would strike his bill from the docket. Do I hear a motion?
We need to take that back to full committee to strike. Can we strike it here? Strike it here. Second.
And voice vote on that?
No, it's a recorded vote.
Recorded vote. Clerk will close the roll.
Delegate Watts?
Aye.
Delegate Watts votes aye.
Welcome, Delegate Watts. Sorry, I forgot you're with us. I hope you're feeling better.
Yes, sir. I hope to be there tomorrow.
Great.
Go, Bruce.
Okay. I would, we have a couple delegates that aren't present, have asked to be last, and hopefully we can accommodate them. So Delegate Carr and Delegate Keem, I think. I think our Chairman Kilgore is ready to have his bill heard, so we will start with House Bill 920. Welcome.
Right here?
Either was fine. Yep.
Anywhere?
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 920.
Everybody hear okay?
A technical
amendment. Can you hear okay?
Yeah. There's a technical amendment to the bill. I think that we need to from DLS. Is that correct?
Yes.
Move to accept the amendment.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I'll report the line
Yes.
amendment. Mr. Chairman, on line 17 of the introduced bill, after convicted of, insert careless driving and infliction of injury or death on vulnerable road users. On line 17, introduced after reckless driving, insert a comma. This language just needed to be duplicated in one section lower in a sentence and was not, so it is purely a technical amendment.
Thank you, Emma. If the patron would explain the bill as amended.
Yes.
Actually,
I've worked on.
We need to vote on that.
Yeah.
Second.
So seconded, and that is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm working on this bill with Senator Survey, and what in 2020 we passed a bill creating the vulnerable user, and basically it was we used it for bicyclists and folks that when they get hit by a car, a lot of times the comments are, "Well, I didn't see them," or etc. So the purpose was the bill was to make it easier to obtain a conviction when a vulnerable user is a victim, because it's hard to convict somebody of reckless driving if the victim's dead or unconscious, and etc. So what the bill does, found out there was a problem. The bill makes clear that it applies even if the vulnerable user dies. So that is sort of akin to reckless driving. There was a lot of concern that the court's going to exclude death because the term in the 2020 bill said serious injury. So a lot of courts would conclude, well, maybe that doesn't include death. So this makes clear it does include death, and it also makes clear that the judge can suspend a driver's license for up to 6 months. So it makes the penalties consistent with reckless driving. It doesn't say shall, but it said, they could suspend them up to 6 months. So that's basically what the bill does. It's just trying to fix it to make the bill clear that it did include death, and make sure that it is a covered when you go to court for an action like that.
Thank you, Delegate Kilgore. Questions from the committee? Delegate Anderson?
I don't have any specific questions for the patron, but I'm not 100% sure why we're doing this. I think it should go to courts, and so I would recommend that we report it and refer it to courts, because it seems like it's a criminal code,
Okay.
and it should be over there.
The chairman texted me and asked me the same. I don't know how I got in here, but I got in here.
Yeah, I'm comfortable assuming it was deliberate, and that if that is something that Delegate Anderson wanted to bring up in full committee, I would recommend that we do so at that point in time, if it goes to full committee. And so, any speakers for or against this virtual?
Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers who are present.
I actually, two students present, sir.
Okay. Yeah, anybody lined up virtually? I think I understood your answer there. Okay, yeah, so speakers who are for the bill?
Yes.
Yes.
May I speak to standing here?
I'd probably be a little bit easier for everybody to hear you if you're near the microphone here, if you're comfortable doing that.
There you go.
Come on. Thank you so much. My name is Laura Foe. I'm a Henrico resident and voter. I come to you before today as a grieving daughter. On July 27th of 2020, my mother, Lucy Lay, was walking in our tranquil neighborhood. She was killed by our across-the-street neighbor who was reversing out of her U-shaped driveway. She was hit, run over. The car was put back into drive, and then the driver drove back into her driveway. Excuse me. My mom died on the scene, just 20 feet from my door. My family, including my 2 young children, saw the immediate aftermath of her death. But it was an uphill battle. There were no immediate witnesses or direct witnesses to what had happened. So it was an uphill battle for the prosecutor to decide what to charge the driver with. Eventually, 226 days later, which was very grueling, they decided to charge her with reckless driving. It wasn't until 55 days after that we went to court, and that was this past December, after my mother was killed. During the hearing, the driver did not speak, did not testify, and again, because there were no direct witnesses, and I did testify, I was only able to talk about the circumstances and the beautiful, tranquil neighborhood in our wide streets and what I observed that morning, and then the immediate aftermath after my mother was killed. The court dismissed the charge, dismissed the case. Again, with the lack of evidence, that was the situation. I am supportive of this amendment because not only does it include explicitly death, but it also makes a Class 1 misdemeanor to operate a motor vehicle in a careless or distracted manner, and such that careless or distracted operation is the proximate cause of serious bodily injury as defined as the death of a vulnerable road user, which is exactly the situation that occurred here. I think about how much my family has been traumatized by this whole situation and how the prosecutor so ably and forthrightly told us that we might not win this reckless driving charge. And in fact, the driver was able to walk scot-free with no fines, no penalties, no mark on her record, absolutely nothing. And so had this law been in place then, it would have been a situation where she could have been charged as a careless and distracted driver. There was evidence that she was speeding to get to an appointment that she was late for. So I guess in conclusion, I just want to say that there needs to be some measure of accountability and justice, and I do think that this tailored amendment would go so far to helping us heal as a family. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to testify. Let me just say on behalf of everyone on this committee, and I think probably everyone in this room, that we really extend our sympathy to you for that extraordinary loss and the loss of your family, to your family. And but perhaps, depending on how the committee acts on this, your testimony and your experience can help change the law.
Absolutely.
Not speaking for the committee, but I know that's your intent, so thank you for taking the time to come here.
It is. I
and help us
appreciate it.
understand what your experience was.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Others to speak, if you care to speak to the microphone, and if you're in agreement with the testimony, we don't want to limit you, but other than to maybe say you're in favor of it or opposed, and perhaps keep your remarks to a minute or two if possible.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Well, good evening. I agree with it. My daughter was 16, October 18th, 2020. She was walking to the store. One car hit another car and it broke her neck. The anguish, the trauma, she was 2 of 6 of my children. The car pled, at the time of the incident, he said that he could not see. When he got to court, he pled not guilty. He was found guilty with reckless driving. He was only $200 fine and reckless driving. That was it. His insurance forced me to sign a $100 agreement that I would sign a waiver to relinquish my rights to not sue for pain and suffering. I can't tell you every day how often me and my other 5 children suffer at the loss of my 16-year-old. She still had a life ahead of her. Literally walking to the store, you should be able to walk to the store. The car was only, I feel like he got charged out of sight, out of mind. He is not being penalized. He is not being sued. They told me that I cannot sue him. I was forced, once again, because of the law. The law protects him and his assets instead of my deceased daughter, who was minding her business. We really got no justice. We really have no peace. We just closure we really can't get from this earth, but we are looking for accountability. We are looking for some things to change to create safer streets for children, elderly, pedestrians, motorists. So in the event of her death, we now advocate for driving awareness so that this does not happen to someone else's child, because this pain hurts more than a toothache and childbirth put together to bury your child. And for the person who is accused, it's nothing. Reckless driving, and he goes about his business. I was forced to sign a waiver that I still have to divide that $100,000 with an attorney.
May I ask your daughter's name?
Her name was Aja.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Aja.
Aja, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for telling us a little bit of the story. We really, again, extend our sympathy and regret that you had to experience that. And we'll do our best to amend the law whatever way it needs to be amended to help prevent others from being in that circumstance.
I think, mandatory sobriety, because at the time there was no sobriety done. Both cars were damaged completely, could not drive away. So the fact of the damage versus the life is, the life was at the minimum, it was at the bottom. You get? So we still losing, we still lacking, and it's nothing to him. It's out of sight, out of mind. He's not being sued. There's no consequence overall to his actions for his subtraction
Yeah.
of our loved one.
Yeah. Well, again, we're very, very sorry for your loss, and we really appreciate your coming in and sharing that with us and helping guide us as we make laws, again, to help make sure that people are dealt with fairly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any others here in the room that are going to speak for or against the bill? At least near the mic so that we can hear you at both ends of the table, if you would. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm Brantley Tindall with Virginia Bicycling Federation, and we were supportive of the initial legislation in 2020 and are supportive of this as well.
Very good.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for letting us know that. We've done virtual as George Kane. Oh, George, you're here with us, aren't you? Are you testifying for or against, George?
He's up there.
Any questions for the committee? From the committee, we operate by motion.
Move to report and refer.
Second.
As amended.
I would entertain an alternate motion. Typically, if it's the will of the that this be sent to courts, then that's communicated. Or perhaps suggest to the delegate that he bring that up in full committee if he would.
Sure. We know where the Senate bill's going. The Senate bill in courts.
It's already reported out, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Senate bill went through transportation in the Senate and has passed the Senate.
I see no need to refer this bill. It's getting a fair hearing, so let's just leave it here.
Move to report as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Ready to vote? Delegate Watts?
Aye.
Thank you. I will close the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. See ya.
Motion passes.
Okay. And I'm looking for patrons. I see Mike, Delegate Mullen, and Delegate Tran. Okay. Either of you committed to be elsewhere? Delegate Mullen?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think this will be rather quick.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, it is good to see you,
Thank
as
you.
always. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak about House Bill 1183. As members of the subcommittee may recall, the problem that was, pardon me, so that I can be heard over the mic. As many members of the subcommittee may recall, this bill is very similar to what was heard 3 years ago in this subcommittee regarding snow on the tops of vehicles. The primary differences this year versus last was that we were hoping for a line amendment from Ms. Buck to allow for accommodations regarding disability. I do believe that that accommodates those who had questions about the disability component of it, but my understanding is that the trucking industry remains opposed. But if I might be able to briefly just state that under current law operating motor
Excuse me to interrupt the patron. Is there a line amendment that you'd like to have introduced?
I don't think that will be necessary, but I do think that will be.
Okay, so that you'll be addressing the bill as amended. Want to be clear if the clerk would distribute whatever amendment the patron has asked us to distribute.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the line amendment will be is posted online. I'll also report the line amendment. On after line 22 of the introduced bill, insert C. The provisions of this section shall not apply to any vehicle displaying disabled parking license plates under section 46.2-731, organizational removable windshield placards, permanent removable windshield placards, or temporary removable windshield placards issued under 46.2-1241, or DV disabled parking license plates issued under subsection B of section 46.2-739. Additionally, after line 22 of the introduced bill, insert as a second enactment clause 2, that the provisions of this act shall become effective on January 1, 2027.
Thank you. I think that's amendment is larger than the bill, but is that a line amendment or a substitute?
Mr. Chairman, this is two-line amendments.
Two-line amendments. Thank you. Patron, explain the bill, please, as amended. Or actually, would the committee accept the amendment? We'll take a voice vote on that.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if I may, under current law, operating a motor vehicle with a partially or fully snow-covered or obscured windshield or snow-covered roof is permitted to be operated no matter what the circumstances. My own personal experience is driving back and forth from the General Assembly during snowy evenings, particularly after late nights that we've had in courts, has been that it's particularly dangerous going down the highways of the Commonwealth, and that when someone does not properly clean off their car, that it can, at high speeds, become a great danger. The thought process for this was to encourage people to clean off their car when they are physically capable of doing so. And to do that, there would have been a $100 fine. The delayed enactment was with the hope that the trucking industry would be able to accommodate this over a period of years, hence the delayed enactment. Last, that we had been able to determine 19 states currently require this at various levels, some at much higher criminal penalties than would be involved in this. That was not the intention, but to hopefully encourage people to be able to properly clean off their vehicle when they're capable. That, Mr. Chairman, is the bill as amended.
Thank you, Delegate Mullen. We'll start with questions from the committee. I don't see anyone pressing request to speak. We'll go to virtual. If no one here, okay. Anyone in the room care to speak in favor or against? We'll start with, I think, perhaps against.
Mr. Chairman, Dale Bennett, representing Virginia Trucking Association and on behalf of Virginia Motor Coach Association. While we certainly appreciate the issue that Delegate Mullen is trying to get to, there's just really no practical and safe way for us to do it with commercial vehicle. If there were widely available devices that could be used at commercial areas, that would be one thing. They just aren't. Mm-hmm. We don't have them at the weigh stations. They're not typically at truck stops in Virginia. The small owner-operator, one truck operator, doesn't have one at his home, so it's difficult for them to do that. The only alternative is that the driver has to get up on the vehicle and clean it himself. And that creates some dangerous situations, 13 feet, 6 inches off the ground. A lot of van trailers are built with very thin, translucent roofs that aren't made to accommodate that weight. Then once you get above 6 feet off the ground, you bring into play OSHA regulations to protect against slips and falls, which means that the trailers would have to have rails put on them or anchor points that they aren't there yet. You got tankers, different configurations of vehicles that we just think create a real tough decision for a commercial driver about putting themselves at risk of injury from falling, trying to get up and clean it off, or what to do. So while we appreciate the delegates, what he's trying to get at is just no really practical and safe manner for us to do so right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak against? Captain Maxey, do you care to provide any insights as to whether or not this is a chronic problem that has been experienced? The state police would.
And Mr. Chairman, Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. No, and I've seen this. I can also appreciate the intent behind it. I would have to say Mr. Bennett does bring up a good point there as far as commercial motor vehicles, but state police has no position on it.
Okay, good. And sorry, I didn't mean to give you a demotion there. It's Major Maxey, I think. Yep. Any comments from the committee or questions? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question, and it's maybe for witness who testified. I'm just a little confused because I just did a Google search about cleaning off tops of trucks and brakes and other equipment, and just curious about. I mean, it just sort of I understand the sort of risk for
Percent
truck
drop.
drivers. I appreciate
Make
that.
sure that she
But I'm
wants to
also
speak or
thinking
not.
about families on the road and something coming off the truck. And I just feel like it's done in
Yes, she
other
has a
states or
question.
other states that have this. Sort of what would this state need to do? For example, weigh stations. Are there other equipment? Because I just did a Google and there are things to clean off the tops of trucks. And I'm new to this committee, so I'm not an expert. I'll admit that right now. But I'm just trying to learn and see if there's a way.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Herring, that is part of the problem, is they're not really commercially available. They exist to some extent in states with much worse climate than we've got in Virginia. The practicality is that it doesn't make commercial sense because you're talking about investing in technology and a piece of equipment that would only scrape the snow off, not necessarily the ice, and it would only be used maybe 5 or 6 times a year. And that's cost prohibitive. Put them at truck stops. Now, you ask about weigh stations, that would certainly require an investment by the Commonwealth of Virginia to equip the weigh stations with them.
Delegate Tata?
Thank you. First of all, I want to tell you I've been the recipient of those big pieces of snow flying on my cars, so I totally get this. But I'm thinking, again, more practicality, like I'm thinking of my niece who's an ER nurse, and if she's after working a 12-hour shift and she's trying to get home and has to go on the highway and didn't get all the snow off her car, I just feel like that's it's just asking a lot, just practically speaking.
Thank you. If there's no further questions in the committee, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to lay the bill on the table.
Motion is to lay the bill on the table. Is there a second? Seconded. We'll vote on the bill. Thank you to the patron. I'm sorry, Delegate Watts.
Aye.
Thank you, Rob. I admire persistence and perhaps in the future.
One day
One day, yeah. Close the vote.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Close the vote. Total is on my screen 7-1. The bill fails.
I'm really new to this committee. All right.
Thank you. It's good to be with you again.
Thank you. Delegate Tran is still with us.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I do have some line amendments.
Okay. With the clerk, I keep wanting to say distribute. We've gotten past paper. Are the amendments available online?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the amendments are available online. I'll also report them. On line 15 of the introduced bill, after owner, strike the remainder of line 15, all of line 16, and through designee on line 17. On line 18 of the introduced bill, after $500 period, strike the remainder of line 18, all of line 19, and through traffic on line 20. Insert, however, for passenger vehicles towed pursuant to a lawful request for towing by a law enforcement officer or other uniformed employee of a law enforcement agency who specifically is authorized to make a request for towing by the chief law enforcement officer or his designee. 3, on line 29, after operator, insert shall when. On line 31, after designee, strike the remainder of line 31, insert a comma. And finally, on line 33 of the introduced bill, after operator, strike the remainder of line 33, all of lines 34, 35, and 36, through mail address on line 37, insert. The provisions of this subsection shall not apply if the owner or operator of the vehicle being towed is not present at the time the vehicle is being towed.
Thank you. I think that perhaps we would want to hear the underlying policy, but I think my recommendation will be that an amendment of that size would perhaps be indication that the bill needs to be worked on further, and that at some point in the future, we would see the bill in its entirety. But at this point, we'll entertain, that's a conversation from the chairman. We'll ask for questions from the committee first.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. What is our posture? Was that a substitute? I noticed a substitute online. Was that an amendment to the substitute?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Herring, there should just be line amendments posted online.
Okay, so
the line amendments that I just read have been posted online as well.
Okay,
to be viewed.
I just want to make sure. So the amendments that you just read are to the substitute, or no?
There is no substitute.
Okay, so it's just amendments. So
amendments to the bill is introduced.
So the amendments are before us.
All right. All right. So move the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll vote on that.
Yes. Voice vote.
Aye.
Voice vote. In favor, I'm sorry, in favor of the accepting the amendments? Aye. Any opposed? Delegate Watts, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Asking you to repeat that, I guess. So would the delegate explain the bill as amended?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and just to your point, I think we just worked with council, and I know we always have an option of either doing a substitute or an amendment, so we just took the amendment route. But I think it reflects conversations after introduced to try to get the bill into a posture that we think is a stronger policy, reflecting some of the concerns we've heard based on the introduced bill. So this bill, HB 959, focuses on police-directed or public safety towing, which we all know occurs when a car breaks down, there's been an accident or some other type of situation. They occur during a really stressful time for the drivers, and made more so when drivers aren't given the pertinent information, like how much it'll actually cost to have your car towed, so that they could make those decisions and better plan. Currently, the code only requires tow companies to post their fees for police-directed tows at their place of business, which basically means a driver won't know the full cost until they show up to pick up their car. And we know that trespass towing, which is like if you have a car, for example, in a shopping center or some other location where it shouldn't be, and somebody tows it off private property, we regulate some of the costs associated with trespass tow, but we are silent on the costs associated with police-directed tow. This bill addresses the concerns around establishing a parameter only on some of the fees associated with police-directed towing, similar to how we regulate trespass towing, and it increases transparency. My microphone is off. I hope everybody heard me. Okay, but it increases transparency by requiring tow operators to provide a fee schedule to the driver if the driver is on site at the accident scene or when the police calls them. I think there has been some confusion and conversations about what fees are actually being regulated, and so I did just have a short handout. You guys can share one?
I'm not sure how we will share that with Delegate Watts.
Absolutely. Callie, can you please send a copy to Delegate Watts' address? Thank you. I just want to be clear on, and I did a comparison for you side by side in terms of what the current code requirements are for trespass towing versus police-directed towing that is being proposed in the bill. This whole issue came to light from my constituent Clark, who is with us this afternoon, and he will share his experience, and I hope to shed light on why we need to have a little bit more transparency and a little bit more similarities between how we regulate both types of towing. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Any questions from the committee?
I do.
Delegate Anderson.
Delegate, are there any police emergency services that we don't regulate fees on? Since we don't regulate on the emergency towing, are there any others that you're aware of?
I would have to defer to council on that.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Anderson, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question.
So this bill basically asks us to regulate the top fee for an emergency hitch, right, disabled vehicle. And we don't regulate that fee at the moment. Are there any other emergency fees that we do regulate that you're aware of?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have that information. I apologize.
Any other questions from the committee? Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
You guys hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess maybe asking the question differently. Is there any reason that the patron knows of or anyone knows of why we have requirements for trespass towing but not for police direct towing? I'm just confused as to why there aren't any regulations to begin with for police direct towing.
I don't have the answer to that. Does the patron care to?
Mr. Chair, I would answer I don't know the history around why we don't, and I would defer to counsel in case she has that history.
Mr. Chairman and Delegate, I don't have that history.
Thank you.
Perhaps some of the testimony, if there's others to speak to it, will help us with that. Any other question from Delegate Tata?
Yes. Again, just being practical, thinking. What happened at 95 the other day? All the tractor trailers, and if you had limited all these towings to just 2.5 times $150, how do you account? I mean, you never know what kind of towing. We've all seen these horrific accidents that require 2 and 3 towing and a lot of other cleanups. So I'm just worried about putting parameters around that.
Mr. Chair, may I respond? Mr. Chair, I would say to Delegate Tata, I would respond by saying, so very clear, I'm proposing to regulate the hookup fee. There are other fees associated with police-directed towing that I am not proposing to regulate. For example, some localities charge an administrative fee. There's also potential environmental cleanup fees. So that I'm not proposing to put any bandwidths on. But for the actual hookup, then I am saying we do that in trespass towing. So we should provide some parameters to police safety towing as well. The reason why there's essentially a markup in the price, right? I'm not proposing it's equal, but why I'm saying it could be up to 2.5 times is we recognize that in public safety towing, companies have to be on the go. They have to, come within the 30 minutes to make sure they're clearing out the roads. Traffic can continue. They have to have their machine, sometimes special machinery at the ready. So we recognize there's kind of an additional cost to responding to that urgent need. But there are other fees that might come in to public safety towing that we are not regulating. So tow companies can still, and localities can still set those prices as they need to.
Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask the patron, so you came up with this number of, I think, 375. I'd just love to know, it seems like it's pretty narrowly tailored to just the hookup. I'm just curious how you came up with that number, maybe the process of that.
Thank you. We did do some research and spoke with localities, and we spoke with one attorney who works on towing for her particular locality out in the southern part of the state. And she shared her research as well. And so localities charge a variety of different fees for hookup, and $375 is at the outset. This currently, if you are a locality with an ordinance that allows you to set your towing schedule fees, you do that for both trespass and public safety towing. So those localities are exempt from the code requirements already. And I took kind of the top numbers there and said, for the localities where there are no local ordinances to best protect the drivers in those places, which are mostly our rural counties and counties outside of the urban areas, that $375 seemed reasonable then based on the data we gathered.
Thank you. We have some people online here that are, we'll go to Clark Hayden if you're ready to speak for the bill.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for allowing me to testify in support of this today, and for Delegate Tran for updating the legislation. In July 2021, I was in an accident that made my SUV completely undrivable. The police officer at the scene called a contract towing company for me. I had never really been in this situation. It was a serious accident like this before, and I honestly had no idea what to do when it came to tow company. When the tow truck driver arrived, I asked about towing my vehicle to the local dealership, and he insisted that it would cost way too much and I should tow it to his lot. There was only a difference of 5 miles from his lot to the dealership. At any rate, he said it would be about $400 and something around that. Based on that, I agreed to have my vehicle towed to his lot. This was late Friday afternoon. Monday morning, when my insurance company got back to me, the first thing they told me was, get your car out of the lot as fast as possible because they will add on all kinds of fees. So when I went to pay the bill, the towing company cashier wanted my credit card and refused to give me an itemized bill to review before I paid. She was adamant that I could not see the bill. I was shocked to learn that at Monday morning, my bill was now $1,070 for a tow of 4 miles. There are many hidden administration charges that are actually added on to the initial towing fee. The icing on the cake was, while I was there to get my car taken for repair, they charged me another $85 to move it from behind the fence 50 feet to the road for it to be moved. This was a difficult experience for me. I was upset it happened, but I think I was more upset that the towing companies can pretty much charge whatever they want in these situations. I think we deserve some transparency in this. You can't stand on the side of the road and sit there and Google prices of what it costs to tow when you're in this situation. So I'm supporting anything that improves this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. We have 2 others. Fred Scheller. Is Fred ready to speak with us? Speaking against the bill, I believe.
Yes, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can, and if possible, we'd ask you to limit your comments to maybe a minute or 2 at the maximum.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm speaking opposed as a towing company owner. Our prices are set under an RFP contract up in Northern Virginia. Everything we charge, from the admin fee to every extra charge, is already set in an RFP. And that is based on our cost structure and the equipment and the availability that we provide for the public. We operate just as a firehouse would. We have day shift, night shift. They're manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At any time, anyone can come and pick up a car. And in reference to the gentleman talking about being charged another $85, that is because the provider that came to the yard to pick up his vehicle did not carry the proper workers' comp insurance, either had none at all, and did not carry the proper liability insurance on his tow truck. That's why those towers are charging a lot less and operate usually out of their apartment building or their home. They do not carry a storage yard or carry the equipment we have.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. And Craig Bieber. Can we make that connection to hear from Craig Bieber? Craig, could you unmute yourself? Any suggestions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Craig, and would ask if possible, could you keep your testimony to about a minute and clearly indicate if you're for or against?
Yes, sir. My name is Craig Bieber. I represent the Major Incident Heavy Recovery Operators Association, an statewide association of towing and recovery operators. We are opposed to this bill. There is a tremendous difference between trespass towing and public safety towing that you've already heard about. For one thing, the equipment is a lot different. For public safety towing, it's a lot more expensive. The number of employees required to respond to public safety emergencies is greater, which increases the costs for the towing company. And we think that this issue needs to be looked at in greater detail, that there are a lot of issues that have not been anticipated by this legislation, and would respectfully request that the committee oppose this bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bieber. And we'll move to people who are here to testify for the bill that are here in the room.
Really?
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Alana Crennan, Arlington County. I represent them. We are very strong support of this bill and making sure that our residents of our county are not subject to crazy fees that can be a problem that we get complaints about all the time. So we really support this bill and thank Delegate Tran for working with us.
If I may ask, I didn't quite catch your connection.
Sorry.
Are you a resident?
No, I'm the lobbyist for Arlington County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And any others in favor of the bill?
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, subcommittee. Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We thank Delegate Tran for bringing this bill, mostly for the transparency. Many times we've talked to plenty of consumers who didn't realize or they weren't given the fees at the time when their car was towed, even if they were there. And if they were in the hospital or something like that, and they had a friend or a family member go pick up the car, then that person was on the hook for many more times of a fee than they were anticipating. So many of them knew there would be a charge, but they weren't anticipating how much they would be charged. So for us, it's very important to have the fee schedule if the person or the operator is, if the owner or operator is present, to be given to them at the time of the tow. That way they're aware of all the fees right then and there. And then if for some reason they know that they can't afford to leave it for the weekend, as her constituent had, or for a week if they're indisposed or their car's needing repair and they're waiting on their insurance company, they can then make the choice to have it moved more immediately or have it towed somewhere more appropriate so that they won't be in, especially the storage fees can go $50 a day. Okay. We've talked to many consumers who have that charge and weren't expecting that. So we just believe that the transparency can be very helpful for consumers.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else here to speak in favor of the bill, if not, will anyone testify against the bill? Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John O'Neill, and I'm a towing company in Arlington, Virginia. I really don't have a dog in this fight, but I was asked to come down and speak because I advise the Arlington County Police Department as to who we use for our trespass towing in Arlington. My tow trucks cost $80,000. The tow trucks that the police department contractors use cost $800,000. They're not apples to apples that we're comparing here. They're completely different. I store on 7,500 square feet of land where I impound a vehicle. The contract in Arlington County requires that the county contractor has 1 acre of land to store on. My mortgage cost is $12,000, where I know that theirs is triple the cost to store a vehicle. The insurance requirements that they have are different than the ones I have by tenfold. Workman's comp, tenfold. The training, tenfold. It's just it's a good idea. I think that the fee structures should be in separate code completely, but you never know what the police tower is going to see when they get on the scene and what they're going to have to deal with. So putting a cap on it, in Arlington County, there's a detective that runs the contract, and there's absolutely no overcharging whatsoever. Okay. It's too valuable for them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the room to testify for the bill?
No, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Bentke with the Northern Virginia Towing Coalition. We respectfully are opposed to the bill, only allowing a maximum of 2.5 times the current rate would basically put out hundreds of contracts around the state and put drivers on the road at jeopardy. You're going to have towers out there that aren't going to be qualified because if you limit those rates, the people that are towing right now aren't going to be able to afford to do So we respectfully very opposed to the bill.
And since I said 4, you're clearly against. I just want to clarify that. Thank you. I think you made that. I think you made that clear. Yes. Anyone else speaking here in the room speaking against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Eric Fly with the Hampton Roads Towing Alliance. We oppose the bill. We appreciate the delegate's efforts. We're glad to work with her. But we are mixing 2 different types of businesses here in one code section: private property towing and emergency vehicle towing. Most emergency vehicle towing is overseen by a police officer back in each and every county. And I'll just be brief. We just oppose it. We don't see how it works. Glad to work with her, but we don't see how this bill works.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. We've got some lights here. Request to speak, Delegate Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions. Thank you for the bill. I certainly appreciate the quest for transparency on it, but I've got concerns about the limitations that some of the testimony that we've heard. Is it required that if you have an emergency, if you've been in an accident as one of the witnesses, that you have to use, you can use your own private, service, or you have to use what the contracted tow companies that the police would call?
In my conversations with the state, Mr. Chair, I would answer Delegate Durant. In my conversations with both the state and local police, oftentimes people do not have their own tow company kind of in their back pocket. I was told that by some of our towing friends that everybody has AAA, there's only 1 in 7 Virginians are covered by AAA, and AAA also has certain regions, depending on your coverage. So certainly not everybody has a towing company. So often people rely on the person on the list. And the way, in the weeds, but the way it works is if you are a locality and you have your local ordinance and you've gone through your RFP process and you have your contracts, then the police in that locality know who to call. If you're a locality without a local ordinance, and many localities don't have their own local policy on fees, then the police have set up kind of here's the call list, right? We go through the list. And that's how they do it.
But I was saying is if you do have it, are you precluded from using that service, your own service? USAA, am I allowed to use them?
Yeah, you can use them if you want.
You can use it, okay.
Yep.
So I think what I've heard from some of the testimony is that it goes beyond transparency, which I would always support, to parameters that would really not be in line with the RFPs contracts that are out there. So, I think this could, working on this continue a bit. I would not be able to support it this time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. And while we're on that specific question, Major Maxey, is there a Major Maxey in the room? Sorry to put you on the spot there, but the delegate may have hit the nail on the head with her explanation, but since we have an expert in the room, I thought I'd ask you to verify.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police, and it was articulated correctly that localities, some do have the contract. State Police will call our own off of a list if you don't have someone, but if someone does choose to use their own service or roadside assistance like AAA, they're allowed to call that.
Thank you. As you were.
Thank you.
Motion. We have a couple other questions in queue. Delegate Tata.
I kind of want to echo some of the concerns. I kind of agree with that. I feel like I'm worried about putting all these restrictions, and I really appreciate I think it was Hayden. What happened to him was horrible, and I'm really irritated for him on that. But I don't even know if your bill will really address all of what happened to him. So for those reasons, the others, I don't think I can support this either at this time.
Thank you. Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if someone in the room can tell me how much, if the pricing in this bill is off because of all the costs, what is the price then point that would make sense if you were to have to put some sort of cap on this? Anyone?
Delegate Bloxham.
I would respond for the industry that there's just too many variables. I mean, if you go to a complicated accident and you've got to get the car off the road, that's one thing the state police really judge the industry by is quick response. And if you don't do a quick response, you get taken off the list. So I mean, and if you are one that has a reputation of being overcharged, that will get you off the list also from state police. I mean, there are certain things in areas that you go into. That's a really hard question to answer because there's just too many variables in that.
Mr. Chair, may I please? Look, I know I can read.
I think we're actually ready to give you the final word.
Yeah, I can read the room, the sense of the room, but I would just want to share with you only on hookup fees, which this bill regulates, not the administrative, not any of the other more complicated fees. Light duty regular car crash, a regular car, so like, pulled onto the side of the street, not a crash. Roanoke County is $200, City of Chesapeake is $150, Prince William County is $215, Loudoun is $200. If it is a crash tow during the daytime, Roanoke is $285, City of Chesapeake is $150 plus additional fees for after hours. Prince William is $300, Loudoun is $210, Fairfax is $300 to $330. This bill does not affect counties or localities with their own local ordinances, but that gives you a flavor of the range of the hookup fees for localities that we were able to obtain. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. No more questions. I think we're ready to entertain a motion. I'm sorry, Delegate Watts.
Thank you. At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
We are in that position. We're ready to make.
And I would move that this bill be carried over to the next session. You heard repeatedly we'd be happy to work with Delegate Tran. Delegate Tran, as you can see, is known for doing her homework. And we have several issues here. Certainly, clearing our major thoroughfares becomes one issue. And at the other end of the spectrum is the issue of transparency, not just what the fee may be. And I believe that there is a substantial opportunity for some to move forward on clarifying these issues, but in this session, I don't believe we have the time, but I do think the problem is there to be addressed. Therefore, again, I renew my motion to carry over to the next session.
We have a motion before us and seconded. That's a voice vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor?
Substitute motion.
State your motion, please.
Lay the bill on the table.
We have an alternate motion here to lay the bill on the table.
Second.
And seconded. We will vote on that motion. Delegate Watts? Delegate Watts, if you could unmute yourself. We're voting now.
The host, at this time, the host had muted me. I'm not saying vote. I'm sorry, but I
the motion is to lay it on the table. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And that motion to lay on the table carries 5-3. Thank you to the patron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
And moving on to the next bill, we have Delegate Carr and Delegate Keem. At this hour, I suspect you don't have any other committee commitments.
Well, since it's transportation, the car should go first.
So there you go. We'll give you extra credit for attempted comedy. Thank you for being a gentleman there. Chivalry isn't dead. Delegate Carr, if you'd care to present House Bill 637 to us, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I okay? Can you hear me okay?
No. There it is.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move the committee amendment.
The clerk
Yes.
familiarize us with the amendment, please.
Mr. Chairman, the amendments have been posted online. I will also report the amendments on line 21 of the introduced bill. After the first instant of the word "of," strike "no more than," insert "at least." On line 21 of the introduced bill, after "hour," insert under the posted speed limit. On line 29 of the introduced bill, after of, strike no more than, insert at least. On line 29, after hour, insert under the posted speed limit. In both of those sections, that would change the language from of no more than 10 miles per hour to of at least 10 miles per hour under the posted speed limit.
I think that's clear. Does the patron care to explain the bill as amended? Or excuse me.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Let's a motion on the amendment.
Second.
Voice vote. All in favor of the amendments, accepting the amendment? Aye. Any opposed? We have the bill as amended before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 637 is designed to help further protect our first responders and roadside workers by amending Virginia's current move-over law. Simply, this bill increases the penalty for motorists who fail to comply with the law, and with the amendment, it states that if a motorist cannot safely move over into another lane, they must slow down to at least 10 miles per hour below the posted speed limit. To give you more background on this bill's origin, Mr. Chairman, I've hosted interns from Randolph-Macon College for several sessions. This year, Dr. Rich Marr's political science class from Randolph-Macon proposed a number of bill possibilities that they researched. I chose and introduced this one at their request. Engaging students in policy-making process is important to me, and I have several students here to speak to the bill, including my current Randolph-Macon intern, Matthew Montgomery.
Thank you. Well, before we go to that testimony, we'll ask if there's any questions of the committee members. So we'll ask for those in favor of the bill first, and in the room. I don't see any online.
You're done.
Okay, thank you. And since the delegate has explained the bill, and she did use the word plural, students, I just see two people. I don't want to, as long as there's not a long line, perhaps you could keep it to a minute or so. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Matthew Montgomery. I'm a senior at Randolph-Macon, and as Delegate Carr mentioned, I am an intern in her office this session. The bill before you, as was stated, is a bill to amend the current move-over law designed to protect first responders and roadside workers. The two provisions of this bill come to us from other states. There's been a nationwide trend to strengthen these move-over laws due to there's another trend that is rather concerning. Over the past decade or so, the number of roadside fatalities has increased. In 2008, we were seeing about 23 a year nationwide. As of 2021, that is now 55, so more than doubling. Interestingly, amongst law enforcement, the number is the same. However, amongst fire, EMS, and tow truck operators, that number has grown exponentially. The bill idea came from a group project that I was on. One of our group project members is a member of the Hanover County EMS, and he was telling us about a lot of close calls that he has personally had with drivers not moving over or slowing down. And just so in an effort to help protect our first responders and roadside workers, I urge that the committee report this bill to the full committee. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Taking the time. Yes. And you're testifying in favor of the bill?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Spencer Willett. I'm also a Randolph-Macon College student, but I'm also a firefighter in Hanover County. So I'm here in support of the bill mostly because it protects my colleagues and I over on the side of the roadways. So the current law does say that you need to move over or slow down. We're often on the side of Interstate I-95, and I'm sure most of us here have been there when it's during rush hour and there's nowhere to move. And drivers are not slowing down. In 2018, Lieutenant Brad Clark was struck on the side of Interstate 295. He was a lieutenant in Hanover County. He left behind 4 daughters and a wife and a lot of colleagues, and he was a mentor to many of us. And so hopefully would ask that the delegates support this bill to support him and his family and also my fellow first responders and I as we work on Virginia's roadways and try to make a safe environment. We can't help other people if we're the ones in the hospitals because we've been struck. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for serving as an emergency responder, and also for taking the time to take an interest in our system of government here. We're impressed.
Thank you. Appreciate
it. Any questions from the committee? Question from Delegate Bloxham.
So this would allow me not to move over. Is that correct? I mean, the way I'm reading this, I can just slow down.
Right. I think that the issue came, and there are places that you can't move over. The road is so narrow that there's no place to move over.
I can answer your question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman and Delegate Bloxham, no, it does not change the existing requirement to move over. It changes the language. If you can't move over, it says if changing the lanes would be unreasonable or unsafe, you need to proceed with due caution. Is current law, and current law says for the highway safety or for the highway conditions, it would change it to at least 10 miles per hour under the posted speed limit.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? I have a question for the patron.
Yes, sir.
So we did hear some sort of anecdotal evidence or experiences. So this is a relatively new law, am I correct? And
well, yeah. Our solicitor.
Mr. Chairman, this law was passed in 2019.
Okay. And have there been other instances that you're aware of? So what I'm trying to get at is, do we have a statewide problem, or have we heard of a couple isolated instances? And I'd invite perhaps Captain Major Maxey, if you'd want to speak to that, as well as the patron.
I do not. The students perhaps have some statistics, but I do not have other than anecdotal.
Okay. I did hear statistics, but I think they were nationwide, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, thank you. Any input from Captain Maxey? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Delegate Anderson.
So the current law, maybe this is more of a question for the attorney, but the current law says move over or slow down, right? That's what the current law says. And this says that if you can't move over, you have to slow down to 10 miles per hour, right?
No, under 10 miles under
the current speed limit. So it's basically, so if the speed limit's 55, you got to go down to 45. If this were to pass, if it's 75, you go down to 65, right? Is that what it says?
Mr. Chairman, yes, as amended, that's what it says.
Okay. But doesn't the current law actually protect, well, doesn't the current law basically require you to slow down to a safe speed under the current conditions? I mean, isn't that what it currently says?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the current law says that you need to proceed, if you can't move over, you need to proceed with due caution and maintain a safe speed for highway conditions. This bill would change it to proceed with due caution and maintain a safe speed of no more than 10 miles per hour under the posted speed limit.
All right, very well. And then the last question, current law, it would still be a misdemeanor not to move over, correct? Is that not considered a misdemeanor under current law?
Yes, reckless is punishable as a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Right.
If there are no additional questions, it's the patron have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is an example of our students being involved in the process. They've seen an issue in their community and they wanted to do something about it. I've heard a number of anecdotal instances, constituents and so forth, concerned about people not slowing down in these kinds of instances. And I think the statistics of fatalities because of speeders on roadways with I think they call them vulnerable road users, would attest to this.
Thank you. And again, thank you to your students. I think perhaps if we test this law a little bit longer, I'd be more inclined to support it. But at this point, I'll entertain a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Bill is seconded, or the motion is seconded, and we'll go to the board and vote on this. Just this once time, I'm going to ask Delegate Watts before I try to close the roll if she's ready to cast her vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. On the motion to table, I vote nay.
Thank you. The motion to table carries 4-3. Thank you, Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My pleasure. And I think,
What last one? Good job. I think
let's see, at this point, the consensus of the committee is to take a 2-hour recess and then come back and hear the bill.
Who's paying happy hour?
Unless we want to revisit that. Thank you. Good pleasure to have your delegate team and to hear your bill.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I really appreciate your time. I know it's getting late and I don't want to take too much time. So in fact, I'll just tell you a reason why this bill is in front of you. I'll just explain that a little bit. There is a subject matter expert who can speak a lot more to the details about the substance, the industry standards, et cetera. And I know there are some questions that have been raised by some of my friends in the industry that are wondering, how this might work. And I also know that our Major Moxie is here speaking on behalf of the state troopers. So let me tell you why I brought this bill, but I also would like to just kind of jump ahead and ask and suggest if the subcommittee is willing. This is a fairly new issue. It's kind of an emerging conversation around safety and what regulations there ought to be. So I think this might be the kind of issue that if we want to take some time during the off season, maybe work with some of the stakeholders, try to fine tune this idea, and then maybe come back next year. So that might be a potential conversation. Not yet. I'm not a member, so I can't make motions. But let me tell you just very briefly how I got to this point. A friend of mine who's a member of the House in across the river from where I live in Maryland actually took this bill and sponsored it in the Maryland General Assembly. And the reason was because in their state, as in other places, there are Department of Transportation standards for safety, especially aftermarket equipment and such. So we want to make sure we have all kinds of federal national standards in terms of who actually installs safety glass, windshields, and such, what the process is that they follow, what regulations they have to follow in terms of safety and training. That seems like it's kind of left to states to deal with. I myself, I'm sure many of you have, I've had at least a dozen windshields that have cracked over the last 20 years or so, both my wife and my cars, and so we usually just go to the cheapest one. I just go to whatever the cheapest thing I can find, take the car in, have them replace it, and then it's done the next day. I've used major name brands, I've used no-name companies, and the reality is, as a consumer, I don't know who's doing the work. So the question that came up in the context of a colleague of mine who's in Maryland is to come up with some kind of a standard so that in Maryland, at least, those that do the training, the installation of the windshields themselves will follow some kind of a standard. So I thought that's a pretty good idea in terms of having something that's a state-based standard that also follows national best practices. So the bill basically says, and I wrote it in a way that just made it simple, asked our state police department and the superintendent, come up with some regs on what the safety standards ought to be. And having done that, what I've realized in conversations with some of the friends in the industry is that the language might be a little too broad because are we talking about safety standards for the glass itself or the training, et cetera. So I think those are the kinds of things that we can try to tighten up, and working with the police department and others, we might be able to come back with some ideas that say, this is what we need some standards on, and here are some best practices. There are some industries out there that are doing this. So that's the reason why I brought the bill. That's the gist of what I'm trying to accomplish, and if I can, I'm happy to answer any questions, but if you're interested, there is a gentleman here who represents an association that's based in Virginia, which is the National Trade Association that's working on these issues. So he'd be able to testify as well. But I'd be happy to answer any questions at this station.
Thank you, Delegate King. Sure. Questions from the committee? Delegate Anderson.
Very briefly, you would like us to pass this by today?
If it's possible to carry over, that way we can continue. But again, we can answer any questions now, and whatever we can answer, hopefully we can have a little working group, informal working group that can work on that.
Yeah, certainly want to give the opportunity for the committee to ask questions. If there are none, then we'll look to people in the room who may have traveled from part of our hearing. Please introduce yourself, please, sir. And
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time at this late hour. My name is Seth Mayman. I'm with the Auto Glass Safety Council, a Virginia-based national nonprofit organization dedicated to the proper and safe installation of auto glass. The Auto Glass Safety Council, or AGSC, members are installation companies and technicians, suppliers of materials such as glass and adhesives, insurance companies, safety advocates, and those who provide auto glass information and services. I'm testifying today in support of HB 699, which would create state auto glass safety standards consistent with those established by the AGSC. This organization developed the Automotive Glass Replacement Safety Standard, or the AGRESS standard, under the auspices of ANSI, a leading national standard-setting organization. The AGRESS standard addresses the technical aspects of auto glass installation, as well as the education and certification requirements of auto glass technicians who perform the process. The AGRESS standard is constantly evaluated in light of evolving technologies and has been updated 3 times since its inception in 1999. The AGRESS standard is a voluntary industry standard. While Virginia law prescribes the type of glass to be used in a windshield replacement, it does not ensure that the glass is installed in a safe manner by a properly educated and qualified technician. HB 699 would implement these safety standards and ensure that windshield replacements in Virginia are performed by trained and qualified technicians in accordance with the latest stringent safety procedures. We believe that this will reduce the number of catastrophic injuries and deaths resulting from automobile crashes in Virginia.
Yeah, sir, excuse me, before you go to page 2, is it pretty close?
Yeah.
Be my guest.
Thank you, Delegate Pekin, for your leadership, and I support the bill.
Oh, I wouldn't want to miss that part of
We're copacetic.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Again, Major Maxey, this is sort of in your wheelhouse, just give you the opportunity to, I guess I would ask you a question. Do we see physical evidence of installation that would be defective or deficient? Do you, as a spokesperson for the state police?
Sure. Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. Mr. Chairman, the bill came to me. We learned a lot. I was able to meet with the gentleman earlier this afternoon to talk about some of the standards. Currently, Virginia, we will dictate what, we'll check to see what certification of equipment is, DOT, SAE. We do not promulgate regulations as to how to repair certain items, and that's what this bill would be doing. So this would be setting a new standard for us, because the safety inspection program, as Mr. Bloxham knows, or Delegate Bloxham knows, it's not for me to tell him how to install certain parts onto a car. We can tell him what is a safe part, what meets a safety standard, but the actual process of installing it, that's something the industry itself has to regulate and set guidelines and certification. So I would say this would be outside of our current operation.
Okay. If I may ask the Delegate Bloxham, who is also involved in safety inspections, is this a problem that you see occurring in your professional involvement with inspecting vehicles?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that most windshield installers that I know on the shore, either a body shop and or the professional windows, probably follow the protocols. I don't know if they're members of their organization or not. I have not seen a big issue with that. That's what we need to, I guess, look at and study.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions, I think we've heard from all the testimony in the room. We operate by a motion.
Second.
And that is a recorded vote.
No, just voice vote.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
And Delegate Watts is going to cast the vote as well. Thank you, Delegate Watts.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir, for your time. And certainly, we'll work on something and come back to you next year with some ideas.
Always a pleasure, Delegate.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. I think we've worked through our docket. Is that correct? No more business before us. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.